Fast Forward Productions. The women are speaking.
What about the after? Because somebody's going to inherit this land. So what do you want to leave for the next generation? For me, whether you're a permaculturist or just a farmer or a homesteader, we are temporary. And so what comes after us? And I think, we have this little bit of time and opportunity to create our legacy with what we leave with our footprint.
You're listening to the Good Dirt Podcast. This is a place where we dig into the nitty-gritty of sustainable living through food, fashion, and lifestyle.
And we're your hosts, Mary and Emma Kingsley, the mother and daughter founder team of Lady Farmer. We're sowing seeds of slow living through our community platform, events, and online marketplace.
We started this podcast as a means to share the wealth of information and quality conversations that we're having in our world as we dream up and deliver ways for each of us to live into the new paradigm, one that is regenerative, balanced, and whole.
We want to put the microphone in front of the voices that need to be heard the most right now, the farmers, the dreamers, the designers, and the doers.
So come cultivate a better world with us. We're so glad you're here. Now, let's dig in.
So hello, today we're back on the Good Dirt with Angela Ferraro Fanning. We have a return conversation with Angela.
We chatted with Angela for the first time a few years ago now in the fall of 2021, and that was a much beloved episode. We loved recording it. We loved connecting with her. She's got an amazing presence online. She teaches so much about small-scale homestead living and just getting started and doing things your own way. And so we wanted to have her back as a little follow-up. So this was certainly a fun follow-up conversation, as you will see.
Angela built and runs Axe and Root Homestead, which is a 6-acre farm in central New Jersey. She started homesteading in 2012 after she suffered postpartum depression with her first child, and she wanted to remove herself from the daily rat race and grind. So she started growing and preserving as much of her own homegrown food as possible, quickly growing from home garden to a farm, bustling with Clydesdales, geese and ducks for eggs, an apiary, sheep, a large vegetable garden, and a small orchard, all while practicing permaculture methods.
She taps her own trees for maple syrup, she creates her own soap, and she even added a hobby vineyard for homemade wine. She believes in a holistic approach to homesteading and works to create a functioning ecosystem that mimics patterns found in nature between every plant and animal on her property.
In 2023, she became certified through Cornell University as a permaculturist. Now she strives to share this passion for natural homestead living with others through her Instagram account, her online homesteading courses, her plant-based cookbook called The Harvest Table, and her books, The Little Homesteader, Little Country Cottage series, and The Sustainable Homestead.
We hope you enjoyed this follow-up conversation with Angela. She's quite the inspiration and wealth of knowledge, and she's really fun to follow along and get to know.
So here's Angela Ferraro Fanning from Axe and Root Homestead.
Hi, I'm Angela Ferraro Fanning of Axe and Root Homestead. I own and operate a small, historic 6-acre homestead in central New Jersey. And what makes me a little different from most homesteaders or farmers is that I'm a permaculturist. I've been certified in it, and I'm very passionate about mimicking patterns in nature and creating a working ecosystem out of every plant and animal on my farm.
And you're also a vegetarian, right? That is very different from lots of homesteaders.
It is, and I'm an author, and I share my passion through books and articles.
Yeah, awesome.
So Angela, for those listeners who have not listened to the previous interview, wonder if you could just give us kind of a quick overview of your story and how you got to where you are, because this was not where you began.
It's not where I began. I've always had an interest in plants, but it was a hobby. and I went to college for graphic and website design. And I started my own graphic and website design business, and I ran that for 10 years. And then I unexpectedly got pregnant with my first child. And simultaneously, in my third trimester, we moved to New Jersey. So I had a lot going on without the support system I might have had otherwise. And postpartum depression set in, and I was really starting to reevaluate who I was and what my identity was. And the graphic design component just wasn't fitting in anymore. I wanted to be outside in nature. I wanted to grow my own food. I had developed at that time recently a lot of severe food allergies. I needed to get away from pesticides and get away from chemicals, even on organic products that are quote unquote organically sprayed. It really just made me reevaluate everything that I was doing. So I sat down with my husband and I said, I'm not happy. I don't want to do the computer thing anymore. I don't want to do graphic design anymore. Can I trade in my paycheck for essentially what we're paying at Whole Foods for organic groceries every week? Granted, we still had a net loss with the just one income, but I learned how to grow my own food. I started keeping ducks. I learned how to preserve food. I was on 3/4 of an acre at the time, so I needed to learn how to grow upwards and not necessarily outwards. I started taking classes on beekeeping, making my own soap, making bread, and it really just continued to snowball into this entire lifestyle. And I felt really passionate about green living always for as long as I can remember. So it's not a surprise for me that this was just sort of the next step and something that I migrated to. It wasn't just homesteading, but it was eco-friendly permaculture homesteading.
And when you did that, did the food that you grew replace the cost? Did that work?
Yes and no, because our family size grew, right? So instead of it just being my pregnant self and my husband, we now have 2 children. And the thing is that they're not as excited about eating seasonally as I am. So they want pineapples, for example, that are not from New Jersey. They want strawberries in the middle of the winter. And so there are some concessions that I had to make. But at the same time, the only time they eat blueberries, literally, is in the summertime. They can't stomach the idea of a blueberry from the grocery store because they say it doesn't taste the same. And the same goes for raspberries. And so there are things that we do not ever buy. Garlic, tomato products, the list goes on and on. But there are things that I do still have to say, all right, I'm not going to deprive my kid of a fruit or a vegetable just because I didn't grow it myself. So there's pivoting that had to take place, but we have entirely replaced some things that we've consumed and purchased elsewhere.
Absolutely. And I think, this is the way that we like to approach it ourselves is you decide what your values are, what you want, hold that out as a goal. But the minute you start being rigid with yourself and saying it can't be this way or can't be that way, you're going to get frustrated and possibly fail and then not end up doing anything. And so the fact of the matter is we are engaged in this global food system, and it does feed a lot of people. For those of us that want to grow some of our own food or belong to a CSA or whatever, it can fill in the gaps and needs to. So our philosophy is that we embrace all of it. There's no rules out there like you need to grow all your food or you grow none of your food. There's lots of room for experimentation here and for education and for making those shifts slowly and demonstrating to the next generation what's possible. And your example is so perfect. How superior in season blueberries are to what you get in the clamshell in the grocery store in February.
It's true. After a while, you just don't want some of the things. It's not worth the trade-off.
I think inevitably it becomes a luxury in a way to have things when they're in season. And I don't want to say you become a food snob, but you're not willing to taste less just for the sake of fulfilling the craving of having it. You're just like, I'm not craving just any blueberry. I'm craving the blueberry that I get in May or June.
I also want to say it kind of reminds me of listening to Christmas music, not at Christmas.
That's a great metaphor. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to tell my raspberry story here.
The raspberry story, capital R, capital S.
This was before Lady Farmer. I call this one of the aha moments of my Lady Farmer journey. We were living in Washington, D.C. in the city at the time, and my husband came home from the store with a bunch of groceries, and he had bought raspberries in the little clamshell, and they were like $6 or something. It was like a tiny little palm full, and they were a little past their prime.
Mealy.
Yeah. They had been sitting in this plastic thing. And I just looked at that and I thought, this is not right. It's February. These are raspberries. They're not good raspberries. They're very, very expensive. And they're in plastic, and there's just so many things about this picture that aren't right. And I had this kind of, I don't mean to exaggerate or be over dramatic, but I really had this kind of deep reaction to it. Like, I don't want to do this. And I told my husband, I don't think we should be trying to buy raspberries in the winter. And he said, well, they're available. If we want raspberries, we can have raspberries. And that's like the whole thinking. And my response was, yeah, but should we? And that just got me going, just that little thing. And now I realize that, yeah, I won't say it's 100% rule, but, we don't eat a lot of fresh fruit in the winter because it's just not what's there. And we just wait. And now in May, when we're recording this, begins what I love to call the berry parade. Because the berries just come one after the other. And you live in New Jersey, kind of close to us, so it's probably similar. It starts with strawberries and then blueberries and gooseberries. And so this is the beginning of the berry parade. I'm so excited because I haven't had berries all winter.
Well, it's funny because I wonder to myself, I think you can have raspberries all year. It's just that you would have them in a different form because you could preserve them.
Yeah.
Right? So they don't need to be fresh. And my husband and I had that conversation a lot, especially when it comes to strawberries. I hate buying strawberries. I loathe it. And when my kids want them in December, they know they're not going to taste the same. I've opened the clamshell box and I take it back if they're already moldy and soggy. And yeah, it's a headache and an extra trip, but it's just sort of, I feel it's a demonstration of protest. Like, this is not okay. We paid $10 for this box of strawberries and it becomes filler, right? Because at some point, the taste isn't going to be the same and the quality is not good. And it wasn't picked at a nutritionally optimal time. So what's the point?
What is the point? So you can say, well, the kids had strawberries today. They got their vitamin C. Well, maybe not.
Well, I can also, they really want strawberries. Like, I don't know if you want strawberries, but I like the idea of it takes a lot of planning and knowing. But if you have the abundance in this, you could, to your point, preserve some strawberries and then have the strawberry preserves in the winter.
I think our issue is that we go through them. I would like to up the scale of my strawberry and blueberry production. I get lots of aroni berries. Are you familiar with
aronias.
those?
Yeah, I grow those.
Aronias.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are a great permaculture plant.
Yes.
Native, highly nutritious. They say it beats out blueberries for the antioxidants and so
Yes.
forth. And they grow really well, almost like a weed. It takes a while to get them going. Have you found that? 3 or 4 years to really get cranking.
Yes. They're beautiful.
But really very, very prolific. However, they're a little tart. You gotta do something with them. It's not like candy, like the blueberries and strawberries, but they're great. But anyway, and just to be clear, in the winter, I will carefully, if my strawberries are eaten up or if I don't have any frozen local berries in the winter, there are really good brands, you can find in an organic frozen berries, and I will treat myself to that sometimes. So I don't want to sound like I'm being some kind of minimalist or something. It's like, no berries in
frozen
winter.
is
It's
a
not
good
like
option.
that.
That's true. And then freezing the berries before you eat them all can work. It's really hard.
You need to up your strawberry plants count, Mary. You got to add more.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you should say that because I had to completely start the patch over this year, and maybe you can help me out with this because mugwort got in there and took over the whole thing.
Really? You couldn't eradicate the mugwort?
I've pulled and tried to suffocate and all kinds of things, but it's very, very persistent right there in that spot. So I've moved the strawberries. I got new strawberry plants and I moved them to a totally different place.
Okay.
And we'll just see. So yeah, I'm going to have to go to a local farm for my strawberries.
That's okay.
Absolutely.
Do you do strawberries, Angela?
I do. Yes. I have something crazy. It sounds impressive. We have hundreds of strawberry plants. I don't know where they go. I mean, it's not the birds that are eating them. I just don't understand the amount of strawberries I pick. Where are they going? Like they disappear on the counter before I get a chance to do anything. So I
They're
understand.
the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why there's not that many to freeze.
Right.
Do you make kefir, Angela?
I don't. No.
Strawberry kefir is so good.
Oh, it's my favorite.
It tastes like a strawberry milkshake.
Really?
Absolutely. Now, I know you're vegetarian, but do you all do dairy?
So I do cheese, but I don't personally drink milk and I don't do ice cream. I do coconut-based products.
Oh, okay. You can do
Right.
coconut
Yeah.
kefir.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's the same thing, right, Mom? Or are they different grains?
No, it's the same grains. The only difference is to keep your grains alive, you would need to store them in cow's milk
Or animal.
any
It could be any animal.
mammal milk. Yeah. In between batches, just for them to to keep going, but they will culture coconut milk, all those nut milks and stuff. I haven't tried it. I don't know how. But anyway, so we've been doing kefir ever since we lived out here. We get milk from the farm and a great pleasure. But strawberry is my favorite. And it's a featured recipe this week in our newsletter.
Oh, that's exciting.
Top of mind.
Because it's strawberry season.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I have a question going back to the last time we chatted. It was October of 2021, which was still very much, I would say, middle of the pandemic still. I'm really interested in sort of like your homesteading arc and, your kid. It started when you were literally pregnant with your first, and then now you have 2 kids and they're, I assume, older. And I'm just really interested in where you've gone with it. And if it's only been full speed ahead and you haven't gone back, have you scaled back some things?
Yes, so you're correct. My kids did age. So my oldest is 11 now, and that's how I keep track.
Oh,
so I've been
wow.
homesteading 11 years. I've been homesteading 8 years at the specific farm property that I'm at now. So we were at a 3/4 acre home prior to that. That's really where I got my practice for growing the food and where we had our first small flock of ducks. I had taken the bee class. I didn't get bees and install them, I don't think, until we moved to this particular property. And when we got here, I brought in the draft horses because I was very passionate about having horses just because I love them and I wanted to ride them. But also being a permaculturist, I want to stack functions. And so everything needs to offer more than one purpose to give back to the ecosystem. And so I wanted draft horses for pulling. And so I had to teach myself how to do that. And that was very interesting. I don't do it as often as I should because I fall prey to the convenience of a 4-wheeler. That being said, there is nothing like the feeling of hooking up a 2,200-pound animal and having it work with you to complete a task. That is the coolest feeling. The problem is it takes a really long time to brush them and tack them. You have to actually get them in position. Then you have to hook them up. Then you have to pull, and then so it's very time consuming. But if I can set aside the time to do that task with them rather than try to crank things out, like right now during planting season, they haul in my pumpkins for me. And I love that. Like pumpkin season, it's like just so slow. The leaves are falling. And it's like a beautiful tradition that we have here to mark the season is they bring in the pumpkins. So that's sort of been the evolution with the horses. The permaculture piece is really interesting because I always just kind of thought it was holistic homesteading. And when I learned the title for this type of farming or homesteading was called permaculture, that was just amazing to me because it opened up all these resources that I didn't know existed. And there's these practitioners who founded it and have been doing it. And there's these principles and this sort of way of life and ways to think about it. And so I just was able to really embrace bits and pieces of that, come up obviously with new ideas and learn from these people who've been doing it for years. And now I'm certified in it. I went to Cornell 2 years ago, last year maybe even, and I'm now certified in permaculture. So that's been a fun change. And then also I've written books. So I have the Little Homesteader series that teaches people how to live in the seasons and how to eat within the seasons and different crafts and recipes and bits of wisdom that speaks to not just kids, but grown-ups, whether you're in a high-rise apartment or have a ton of land. And then my pet project is the Sustainable Homestead book, which takes everything from laying out pastures to finding suitable animals based on what type of forage grows and what they can do for you and what different breeds can do for you on your farm or homestead and how to set up an orchard and care for the soil. And that's one thing that maybe makes me a little bit different is not only am I a permaculture homesteader, but I don't just implement permaculture gardening practices. I do all of it. It's really important to me that I have a closed ecosystem. So I'm not just saying, oh, I'm going to build my garden soil with organic matter or compost. I'm going to go get it at the store, get it at another farm. It's really important to me I get that here. And I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it the other way. It's just that for me, my value set is I want to try for as much self-sufficiency and sustainability as I can. And it's important to me to incorporate not only animals and plants, but to actually have them help each other. And as for my children, I mean, they're of the age now where video games are just all they're interested in. I am very much of the mindset that my children are not forced to do farm chores. I don't think it's wrong that anybody might do that. But for me, I want them to understand that living this way is oddly a privilege. Not everybody has the space or the time or the means to be able to have a farm nowadays. And so this is my choice for how we live our life and for what we do with a lot of our disposable income is, bringing in these animals, caring for them, planting, buying plants, that sort of thing. And so I want to make sure that they understand it's a privilege. They know that it's my choice. And in doing that, when it's take your kid to work day, they've never gone with their husband. They go, or my husband, they go with me. They loved when they have friends over to brag about, oh, this is where the eggs are. This is the honeybees. These are my horses. When it's show and tell at school, they want to bring in a piece of a beehive. So they're proud of it. They don't view it as an obligation. They view more the lifestyle as a perk and something that they enjoy sharing and talking about with others.
Yeah. I think it's really wise to not like say, okay, we're a farm family, put away the video games and get out there and shovel the stalls. Yeah, I think that's really wise because they'll integrate it as they're going to do that anyway, whether you force it or not. So I'm 100% sure that the lessons and the learning is being demonstrated every day by what you're doing, what you're fixing for meals, and what they can taste.
My mom used to tell my brothers, well, mostly my one brother who is really into video games, she'd leave the house and be like, when I get back, you and Evan, his friend, better be outside. This is,
You're going to be outside.
In the olden days when we had one computer for the family and they'd be in the computer room doing stuff. And then so she'd, go to take me to ballet or something and then come back and the boys had literally moved the computer outside and we're playing.
They not only
So
had they moved the
cheeky.
computer, they had moved the couch out. They had taken the couch, put it out in the driveway, and they were doing video games outside.
Okay, well, first of all, the rebellious side of me is very impressed with their
amazing.
ingenuity.
Yes.
I think that's incredible.
Yes, it was very funny.
But also, I do love that because I know you've had a farm. I love that you just told them you just need to be outside. That's what I say to my kids all the time: is you don't have to come out and muck stalls like you were saying. I just want you to be outside. And it's funny because I hear so many people say, well, my kids have these farm chores or my kids run the egg business. They have to collect the eggs and sell the eggs. I've heard those as sort of recurring themes or ideas in farm families. And I do really love those ideas. And I get they build so many different morals. They build value. They give you work ethic. For me, it's just I need my kids focus on school. They can go do their downtime. I don't homeschool. And I just remember when I was younger, my parents were the believers that I needed to get A's and B's in school. I had to be the captain of the dance team. And then I also had to have a part-time job and I was burned out. And so I don't necessarily want to follow that same path for my kids. I want them to have their responsibility right now, which is school. And then outside of that, be outside. But yes, you can also play your video games. I sit on my phone sometimes. So to me, that's the same thing for them.
I'm like you. I love those stories of the enterprising kids and the things they do. And I think that's really wonderful if the kids are into it. And I'm kind of envious. My kids did not grow up on the farm.
You had a beautiful garden, but we didn't have a ton.
They grew up in the suburbs. My children had a completely suburban upbringing, while in my head, I was kind of headed in the direction of something else. So in a lot of ways, it was conflicted, but it's important that they pursue their interests. And they went to these wonderful schools that had all these resources and stuff, and they were all in the performing arts, and they had a great upbringing in public school in the suburbs. It's great. And now that I'm out here and got all these projects going, and I'm thinking, what would it have been like if I had raised them here? I wonder, would they have liked it? Would they have gotten into it? Or, and it probably would have been just the same thing. They would have wanted these activities and they would have wanted the video games. And, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder about it, but here we are.
We probably wouldn't be doing a podcast together about this stuff if I hadn't grown up like this. So that's one thing.
Sure, you never know.
It's an interesting conundrum. I sure do believe in my heart, that kids need to be outside and be immersed in nature some of the time.
Absolutely.
And the more time, the better. But obviously, we live in 2024 and there's lots going on. Yeah, it just is what it is. So I always tell parents, I love to say, when you have a choice, outdoors over stores.
I love that.
Yeah. So when you have a choice, you're out with the kids. And I talk about this even my little May reflection. And you're maybe on your way to pick up things for a party or whatever. Maybe just in that moment say, okay, we're going to do something different. We're going to go take a walk. And how powerful that would be to choose outdoors over stores just once.
I love that.
Just try and then see how it goes. And that's huge. If you do it once, even you tell the kids, we're not going to go buy stuff right now. We're going to go be outside instead together. I don't know. That's kind of powerful.
One of the really big compromises that I had to make kind of along these lines is my husband and I used to travel all the time, the time. And that was just what we did for fun, is we would take trips when we were in our 20s. And then, before we got the farm, we even still did that with my oldest. And yes, we do travel still. But my husband really gets the travel bug in the summertime, which is very difficult for somebody who's passionate about growing their own food, wanting to survive off that as much as possible year round. So one of the biggest compromises is my husband said, I would be happier about being home all summer long and have less cabin fever if we got a pool. And I was like, we're not getting a pool. No way. We're not getting a pool. One, I don't want to take care of it. Two, there's chemicals. I'm not okay with it. I think they're not attractive. We compromised, and I don't post it on Instagram because it's just not a
Complicated.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we compromised. We got a saltwater pool. We got the smallest model they had. It's very modest. It's only May. The kids have been outside constantly. The video games have dropped back drastically, and we spend all day, every day when it's nice outside by this pool. And so I thought, you know what? I wasn't crazy about getting the pool, but my kids are actually outside more. And number two, I'm going to be home more in the summer now. But three, some people would say, well, traveling is just as bad to the environment because of the planes and the output and blah, blah, blah. I guess it depends on where your priorities lie. But one of the coolest things is our honeybees have flocked to the saltwater. I did not know that honeybees actually need salt to thrive. I did not know that, because anytime the kids splash, the honeybees are all over the pool deck, and my kids don't mind, farm kids, right? And I thought, is this bad for them? I should research this. Obviously we know that bees need water for honey. They need salt water. So if you don't give them a source of salt, they go find it. And, I made sure to research, okay, is it the salt water that's creating chlorine? Is that getting into our honey? No, it doesn't work like that. It's totally fine. It ended up being this really weird little perk in so many different ways that just came from a compromise of, okay, how do we take a step back? And it's worked out wonderfully.
That's so like permaculture-y too. Like it benefits all these things.
It does. It just has all these different little benefits that I didn't think about.
And who would have thought
I know.
a
Yeah.
pool as part of your guild?
Yeah.
I know, right?
Your guild, and then it helps the honeybees. I did not know that about honeybees. I'll have to ask. We have a beekeeper. He keeps bees on our property, so it's mutually beneficial. We get all the pollinators and we get some honey, and he gets to get honey for himself to sell. It's a wonderful, neighborhood, local collaboration. And I learned so much from him. We, just really recently, a couple of weeks ago, had a big swarm, and I happened to be standing there, and guess what? He happened to be there tending the hive.
Did he catch it?
And we caught the whole thing, and we put it on a reel. You can see it on Instagram. And has that ever happened to you? Do you know about the old-fashioned tinning technique about clanging the shovel?
No.
Okay. So we saw the cloud, we saw the big thing. And I said, Joe, there's been a swarm. And he was just getting out of his truck, and he took a shovel and a hammer, a screwdriver or something metal, and started this slow, rhythmic kind of clanging on the shovel. It made a loud clanging sound, but real slow. And that is an old technique for calming the bees down, and it'll hopefully will encourage them to settle sooner, so they're not flying far away. And sure enough, they just flew a few yards and settled in this big hackberry tree we have that's just maybe 50 yards from the hives. He had a long pole and a bucket and was able to get him down and collect him and put him in a new hive. And then the next morning, when he discovered that they were all settled and happy, and he had gotten a queen, that's kind of a gamble whether or not you're going to get a queen in the new group. And they won't stay if the queen's not in there. Apparently, the queen was in there, and they seemed happy. So he just moved that box back over to where they were. So they ended up being next door to where they used to be.
But the shovel and the clanging of the tin calms them.
The vibration, I guess.
That's fascinating.
I don't know if you've ever seen a swarm, like, they start moving and they can just move way off, and then you have no idea where they're going. And this is a way to get them to settle down, hopefully where you can see them and collect them rather than having to go hunt for them. Or maybe, I don't know, when you have a swarm, do you try to worry about catching it, or you just let it go? Or how do you handle that?
I catch them.
How do you do it?
Usually I'll just watch them to see where they go. And often, because they're so loaded up with honey, they don't seem to go very far. The problem is when they go to a branch that's too high and I can't physically get them. The thing is, like when you try like a pole saw, a chain pole saw,
Yeah.
So if we're to reach on a tall branch, the problem is, okay, if that branch falls, where's the queen? Is she damaged? Did I lose her? Even if you grab like a massive branch, like I have found sometimes they'll just inundate an entire tree. If I try to grab the biggest branch first, sometimes she's not necessarily in that cluster, and then they all go swarm back to the tree because that's where she is. I actually really do like catching swarms.
It's fascinating.
It is.
I think another thing some people don't realize is that the swarms are going to get away. I mean, you can't obviously collect all the swarms, but honeybees are not native. And, they can go make hives in your walls or, go places that aren't so great that are, can kind of cause problems. So it's great if you can catch them and put them where you can manage them and where they can make honey and do what they're supposed to do. But they're unlike most of our native bees that don't live in hive communities and stuff. So I think that's a difference a lot of people don't know about,
I agree.
Yeah. So, they might say, why don't you just let them go in the wild? I say, well, because they, actually they don't belong out there.
Who knows where they'll end up?
Yeah. But they're still part of modern permaculture. How do bees fit into just talk about that a little bit? Because I'm curious about it myself since they're not native.
Yeah. So I think one reason we have bees, honey is always a perk, but that's not really why I have bees. If I take honey, it'll usually be like maybe a small amount in just every other year. The purpose of our bees is to increase our yields. Since we put in the orchard, we get a lot more apples, a lot more pears, etc. if we have honeybees on site. Now, one problem you run into is a lot of people say, you shouldn't keep honeybees. They're not native. You should just cater to pollinators. Well, my answer is, why can't you do both? Why does it have to be one or the other? I can have honeybees and I can increase my yields while still planting host plants and nectar plants like crazy that not only benefit native pollinators, but that the honeybees really love too. There's the argument, oh, well, if you do that, you're going to run out of nectar. Well, then my answer is you don't have enough plants. So really, I think if you are feeding bees appropriately, you will have enough for not only natives, but also domesticated honeybees. And like I said, we'll take honey a little bit, maybe every year, every other year, but the bees get to keep what they make. They get through winter. We've been overwintering the same colonies for years and years and years. I actually just sold some this morning. I boxed them up before we had the podcast here, sold a couple of hives. So they're healthy, but I see natives all the time and I video them all the time. So it's not like the domestics are winning out the war on territory when it comes to the natives. They all interact together just fine.
Yeah, I agree 100%. We do the same thing. We have honeybees. I grow a ton of natives. I'm letting huge swaths of the property go wild so that all that stuff can grow up. And I am the same way. I go out in my garden and I see them. They are commingling. You'll see the honeybees and you'll see the native bees and they're all just buzzing away and there's tons of blooms. I don't feel like we're compromising the native bees at all. I feel like the native bees are very well fed. The honeybees, they've been on the continent for several hundred years. So it's not like this is a new thing. We enjoy our bees. I love the whole idea of it.
It sounds to me like you feel like you've tried to reconcile like the native versus honeybees thing in permaculture because honeybees are not native. So that's kind of what we're doing, right, Mom?
Well, yes, bees have been here for hundreds of years. And as it stands now, there's a quote off the USDA page that says 1 out of every 3 bites you take is dependent on pollinators. So our food system, local or otherwise, I guess, is hugely dependent on pollinators. So yeah, again, it's just like, here we are. This is what we have, and this is the way things are working. And honeybees are a part of it.
I agree. And I've never heard a beekeeper, someone who actively keeps bees, say, I stopped keeping bees because they were detrimental to native pollinators. You only see the argument from the other end where it's people who haven't kept bees and witnessed that interaction themselves who say, oh, well, your honeybees are taking away from the natives. If you've been a beekeeper, if you've interacted with beekeepers or helped a beekeeper, then you know that there is plenty for everyone.
This is very timely. I'm trying to remember what podcast. It was either New York Times or Vox or some major media outlet that does these sort of current event, 30 minutes a day of just like one kind of specific topic. And one, I think it was last week or the week before, it was, we fixed the bee problem. Like there's like not a shortage of bees anymore, like officially. It was from Vox Media Today Explained. The episode is called Honey, We Saved the Bees. And it's from April 26th.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we'll have to link that.
Let me tell you about what it's like to drift to sleep on a 100% natural wool pillow sourced from regenerative farms, wrapped in a lovingly handmade organic cotton pillowcase. Oh wait, I can't. I think it's just something you're going to have to try for yourself. Holy Lamb Organics is proud to carry on a centuries-old tradition of making beautiful textile products by hand. Combining heritage methods with pristine natural and organic materials and sustainable business practices, they bring a dedication to healthy living and the environment. Everything Holy Lamb does reflects their devotion to the planet and its inhabitants. From their supply chain to their manufacturing processes to their facilities management, nothing happens without considering the environmental impact. Most importantly, they're also dedicated to fair labor practices, secure working conditions, diversity, and inclusion. From the farm to the mill to their partner manufacturers, everyone shares the same high ideals of a safe, respectful workplace and environmentally conscious methods. Making good products enables them to do good work. Every time we order something from Holy Lamb Organics, we're proud to support a small town, made in America company. You can find Holy Lamb Organics in the Lady Farmer Marketplace. For additional marketplace discounts, you can join the Almanac, our member-supported community platform. Find Holy Lamb Organics products including pillows, sheets, natural wool comforters, and more in the bedding section of the Lady Farmer Marketplace at www.ladyfarmer.com.
Last time we talked to you, it was kind of in the middle of COVID, and I think your kids were still schooling at home, or they had gone back part-time a little bit, or it was that next fall. And I just want to ask you, as a mom and a homesteader and someone interested in slow living and these things, do you think COVID changed anything, or do you think we got a glimpse of a different way of doing things, and it's just now we've just gone back all the way? What are your thoughts on that? I'm curious because I think about this a lot.
That's a big question.
I know.
Well, I think it's done a little bit of both. Realistically, I think that, there was the whole victory garden movement.
And it's worn off.
A little bit. I think there was some exposure. I think there was sort of an awakening maybe to how reliant people are on our food systems. But do I think people went back to old conveniences or their old way of life? Absolutely, because they're creatures of habit and convenience. There's some things, little day-to-day things that are still the same, right? Like grocery delivery. We didn't really have that before. Grocery pickup at a store, you staying in your car at these places and having people bring things to you. I mean, they even do it at hardware stores. In a way, I think there's even more convenience on people now, right? Because now they have more reason to not get up and do something. They could just sit in their car or have something brought to them. So I think those things have stuck around. I would like to think, though, that there are quite a few people who have learned skills, maybe like making bread or making soap from the pandemic that continue to do so. I'm not sure, though, necessarily that the reliance on owning chickens for eggs or having your victory garden has necessarily stayed such a passion for people.
Yeah. I think that first spring, you couldn't get any seeds, and the garden centers were just sold out of everything. And at the time, that spring and summer, when people were talking about their awareness of the supply chain issues, and also the feeling of being home and not being able to go everywhere all the time, I just thought that was really going to change things. I thought that was really going to shift people's mentality.
Can I ask you, do you think it changed your habits in any way?
Well, we are empty nesters, and my husband's retired. So the whole COVID thing just sort of was the way we were already living. And I know a lot of people really struggled, and I don't want to minimize this, but it just really didn't change much for us at all.
We were the same.
Yeah. As we've moved forward and things have gotten back to normal, I go out there in the world and, there's all the traffic and there's all the people and there's all the crowds and everything. I think, wow, people just really went back to what they were doing. And it's okay. I just like to hear people's reflections on it. I do know a lot of people that don't go into an office anymore. They work from home.
Yeah.
That's a mixed bag. I know. I will say one thing that has changed for me dramatically in a good way is Zoom. For me personally, like meetings or things that I would have to, leave after dinner and go drive and do and everything, that's been great. Although I will say, I of course love in-person gatherings, but I think Zoom has been really helpful.
Yeah. It is a great way to connect with people.
Yeah, and we have our whole online community where you're just meeting with people and getting to know people on Zoom for years. And now more recently, we know of people out there in the community together personally
Yeah.
because they met each other through Lady Farmer community. And so I know a couple of girls that went on vacation together recently and they had never met personally.
That's wonderful.
They just decided to do this trip and they met up.
Cool.
And they did it because of Zoom. They felt comfortable enough that they knew each other well enough over Zoom to do that.
So back to you, Angela. You've been working on the book that you said, The Sustainable Homestead. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
What's the progress on that?
Yeah.
The Sustainable Homestead came out March of last year.
Oh, it's
So
out.
It's
Okay.
been out. Yep. It's been out for a little over a year now. And it's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold. That is I would very much like to write another book. I've been talking to my publishers about other options and ideas, but I mean, it doesn't look like a compendium because the spine isn't that thick, but it's like everything. It's like everything that I do in a book. And
The magnum opus.
it is. I think I tend to be a pretty concise person when I explain things on, YouTube or Instagram or something. The one thing that the book allowed me to do is harness those graphic design skills that I have and create visuals to help explain everything that I do. So I've got charts and diagrams and visuals, and my publisher was really great about giving me the freedom to do that. So I really like to visually explain things with graphics. So it's loaded with infographics. It's everything. It's everything from before you even put a plant in the ground or a fence post. Like, what do you need to assess about your quote unquote site? And it doesn't matter if it's a 1/4 acre or 5 acres. Literally, I have plans for those sizes in the book. It's just like, okay, we are wrapped up in a society of, I saw a show and I want my property to look like that. I saw this on Pinterest. I saw this on Instagram. Well, the thing about being a homesteader, and more to that, and a permaculture homesteader, is it is so specific to your site. You cannot copy your neighbor. You cannot copy anybody if you truly want it to work, because every single ecosystem within nature is different. Every pocket, just from miles from 1 point to 5 miles away, is different. Plants could be different, rivers, et cetera. So rather than say, okay, here's what you should do, the whole first chapter is dedicated to, okay, here's what to look for. What wildlife already exists on the site? Because don't spend your money on buying animals to do X, Y, and Z if you already have free wildlife inhabitants that are doing that. You don't need to double up. And this is how we also build a coexisting relationship with surrounding wildlife. So we want to make sure that we're not going to come in and establish this farm and constantly have to set traps and chase away fox. It's not sustainable in any sense. It's not something you can do long term, and it's also not good for the environment. So it's really just an entire chapter to an assessment. And then, I talk about, okay, so here's how we establish soil, whether that be for cover crops or for growing or for forage for your animals or all of the above. And I mentioned, bringing in different animal species and different breeds that are appropriate and best suited to different things. And then we talk about companion planting, reading your weeds and what they mean for your soil, because they're there for a reason and they're communicating to you. And then setting up your pastures, setting up an orchard, how to compost. And then the last chapter, which isn't very typical in any homesteading book, I don't think, is, okay, what about the after? Because while you're doing all of this for you, somebody's going to inherit this land. So what do you want to leave for the next generation? For me, I am allergic to nuts, but I leave my chestnut, my walnut trees, because it's not about me. I'm stewarding this land right now. Somebody's going to need that food later on. I could harvest it now and donate it. I could sell it. I don't, because I just don't have time. So unfortunately, the nuts just go to the wildlife. But it's this piece of, with any land, with any site, whether you're a permaculturist or just a farmer or a homesteader of any type, we are temporary. And so what comes after us? And I think, we have this little bit of time and opportunity to create our legacy with what we leave with our footprint. And so I think that's really important to think about.
Oh, yes. I'm sitting here thinking about my property and thinking about through that lens, like, what will I be leaving behind? And often as I'm walking around and, looking at things, I wonder if the next owner of the property will have the same goals I do about protecting pollinators and the soil and all these things. And these are things you don't have control of. But it's very, very interesting to think that way. And I love that you included that in your book. So when we talked to you last time,
You had just launched the Little Homesteaders book.
how is that going? You were just waiting for it to come out and it was delayed.
Oh, yeah.
Supply chain issues.
Because of COVID. Yeah. So those are all out now. And I'm in talks with my publisher right now about creating a Christmas edition, which is a really interesting conversation because here in the United States, can't really have Christmas tradition books, but this is with a UK publisher. And so this is all about celebrating Christmas. And it's just kind of a little bit of an unwiring from what we're used to in our society to go back to saying, okay, we're going to emphasize Christmas. And so I'd write this book about Christmas. And so that's something that I'm working on now. And I have ideas for other books along the lines of the same thing as the Sustainable Homestead, things that are more how-to and guides, but nothing concrete there yet.
Who is your publisher?
For the Little Homesteader series, it's a division of Quarto called Ivy Kids. And then for the Sustainable Homestead, it's the Quarto office here in the United States.
And while you were running through your book, I was looking up some images from the book and what you have on your website. It looks awesome. I'm so impressed that you did all of those images and that it's such a comprehensive guide to all of this. It's really amazing.
Thank you. It's funny because it'd been brewing in my brain for so long, and I live this every day, that when my publisher sort of helped me shape this idea into what it was going to be, and I outlined my chapters, I wrote it so quickly because I just needed to get it out. I don't know if I could do that again, but I just needed to get it out, and I had all the ideas and I had the graphics, and so I was sending things to my publisher, and he's like, I'm not going to get back to you for like 2 months. And I was like, okay, fine. I just need you to have it. But yeah, that one poured out of me.
It was gestating.
Yeah, definitely.
And then it was born. Yeah, I know. And sometimes, we have ideas and they can take a long, long time to get out, but they will.
Yeah.
So I have another thing I want to ask you. I've been curious about, and Emma mentioned it at the beginning. You are a vegetarian homesteader, which is great because it's kind of, it's just different from the typical homesteader profile. And so I wanted to ask you, what kinds of foods do you grow that might not be on the typical homestead because you're trying to fill in the protein and all of that with vegetarian meals?
That's an interesting question. Well, we do a lot of beans and peas. We're very bean and pea heavy in the garden. And that also segues, I've tried growing quinoa. I've grown garbanzos, soy. I've grown, obviously every year we grow your typical green beans and bush beans and all different types of shelling peas and also peas for freezing. And then, a lot of people underestimate the amount of protein that's actually in broccoli. And as in kale, those are quite high in protein. So many green and cruciferous vegetables specifically have a lot of those nutrients. Let's see, I mentioned that we have nuts on the property. So I don't eat the chestnuts and I don't eat the walnuts, but I just put in almond trees, cold hardy almonds. So yeah, that's something that I'm really excited about growing. I would love to be able to harvest my own almonds. I think that would be so cool. So we'll see if that works. Nothing else is coming to mind at the moment, but we do make, with organic flours, we do make our own seitan as well. I'm not sure if you're familiar with seitan.
Oh, seitan? That's how I say it in my head.
Same thing.
Seitan.
Yeah, that's actually a product made with wheat gluten, and it has the consistency of pork. So we make our own with that. Keep it in the fridge, pull it out when you need it. But for the most part, I'm not really into like replacement meat products. I just don't eat meat because I don't want to. I'm not looking for something to give me the same vibe. So yeah, we grow all of those plants.
So how did the garbanzos go? I've been wondering.
They are hard. They were very finicky for me. And honestly, I thought I had grown a lot, and I expected it to be, my first time growing it, I expected it to be like a green bean, like where you get multiple beans off of one plant. You don't get that many beans per plant. So you need a lot of plants. That was tricky. The quinoa was also very tricky. It grew very well and it's beautiful. However, you have to do the whole threshing thing or removing the hull. And so that is a little bit different. Remove the chaff off of it. And so I thought I grew a lot and I got like a quarter cup.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, these are things that we learn. But one thing that I would really like to look at, which is suitable for my particular site, because we are on a hillside and we get a lot of flooding and we're very damp, is wild rice. Wild rice is really high in protein. I think it could do really well here. So I need to come up with a spot for that. I've kind of used up my 6 acres already.
Well, the beans, I would like to grow more beans myself. And this year we partnered with Pine Tree Seeds this spring, and they have something called, this is 1,000-year-old cave bean.
Oh yeah, I've grown those.
Oh, you have? Did they do well? I just planted some a little while ago.
They're beautiful.
They're coming up. They're about 6 inches high. And so I'm excited about that. We get beans and rice and some dried goods and flowers and so forth at our CSA. We have a full diet CSA, and they happen to have all that stuff.
That's awesome.
I have a question. You do so much, Angela.
Thank you.
How have you, I won't ask you what slow living means to you because we did do that last time, but I would like to know, how have you experienced slow living the past week?
Oh, that's a very good question. I actually think about this a lot because as someone who's a time optimizer, I tend to want to do it all, and you cannot. And so I am constantly, daily, making a conscious effort to do less. I know so many people who think that they are slow living folks, and it does not exhibit what I think slow living means because they are chock full on their calendars and they are stressed out and overwhelmed. And for me, that's why I got out of the rat race, the 9 to 5. For me, slow living means one, I'm actually fully present when I'm doing something. I'm not thinking about my to-do list. I'm making a conscious effort to think about what I'm doing and be in what I'm doing. Granted, I always have to have my phone next to me while my kids are at school. But beyond that, I don't use my phone in the evenings. It's rare that I would post on Instagram in an evening. I do it when I'm waiting for my kids in the car. All that stuff has gone to the wayside. It also, though, means that I'm not overcomplicating my calendar. I love social gatherings. I love getting together with friends, but I really need downtime, especially on the weekends. So I'm not filling my calendar not only with farm stuff and kids stuff and sports, but I'm also not doing all the social stuff that I might have normally done in my previous life. So for me, it's about taking a step back and just being able to breathe. And there's that whole, I'm Italian, there's that saying, the beauty and the simplicity of doing nothing. I try to harness that constantly. So it's not even about, I'm going to plan to sit down and watch a movie. I don't like doing that. I just want to be able to walk around the property and just be there. And so that's something I try to do every single day. There's a lot of power in that. And I think it relieves, for me, so much anxiety, so much stress. And my to-do list is huge, but I don't let that dictate my day. I used to very much. And now I try to not.
Ooh, tell us your secrets. How did you go from I'm like, I need to know how to do this.
I mean, I just had to really have a talk with myself and be like, you know what? I add 1,000 things to my to-do list. I mean, not literally, but it feels like it some days. I add constantly, and it's never going to be all done. It's just never. So I chose a lifestyle where I am doing. It's not done. It's never going to be done. I chose farming. I read that somewhere the other day. It's not farmed, it's farming.
Oh, that's good. That's really good.
I can't take credit. I don't know where I saw it. Yes, it is. And so it's just like, okay, I have to kind of give myself a priority. My kids are at school. What am I going to do while they're gone? And then when they get home from school, I see them, I'm with them. The animals get fed their evening ration, but then my evenings are free. They need to be free because that's good for me, and that's important to me to have that time with them.
And also, you're familiar with the permaculture principles. It helps, and I'm sure this helps you as well, because a big one is observation. So what you said about just walking around the property and looking, I do this as a conscious exercise as well. And when that little part of your brain goes in and goes, oh, you need to go clear out this bed because it's just such a mess right now. I remember this is my observation time. So I love walking around the garden in the evening, with a cup of tea or whatever and taking it all in. And yeah, you take mental notice and things, but it's not like you have to run, go do it right then.
Yeah. And when I've gone on vacations and I love to walk through gardens.
Oh,
and it's like,
yeah.
I'll notice that they have weeds, but I don't ever look at somebody else's garden and think that looks awful or think they need to get out here and do that. So I'm trying to give myself the same grace. I go to my own spaces, and it's like, if I'm doing all this work because it's important to me, I place value on it, right? And morally, and it's important to me to live this way. But at the end of the day, if it's not making me happy and it's just making me stressed out all the time, it's not the right lifestyle for me. So I want to be able to actually, I'm working for myself. I want to be able to enjoy the work that I did and try to be proud of myself for what I've accomplished. I mean, that's so much easier said than done, but I try.
That's so helpful to hear, though. And I bet people listening will appreciate that, too. I think we all need to hear that way of thinking. And it's constant, too. It's something you have to come back to because, you get it. You understand it intellectually one day, and then you just remind yourself of it all the time.
Yeah. I was just going to say, you have to practice it.
It's a practice. It's like conscious breathing. It's everything.
Yeah. It's like some people, they look forward to their glass of wine. In the summer, I like to have my glass of rosé sort of as that's my transition, right? We have our coffee in the morning and that helps us to get going. And then I have my one glass of rosé at 5 o'clock. And that is okay, now it's time to assess and unwind and just sort of sit in what I've done for the day. And so I'll walk around with my little glass of wine and my kids will be there and it's great. The dog's there, but it's okay, this is this is what we did today. And I can take pride in that and I can enjoy that. And that's my transitional drink.
I also will say, you've mentioned traveling and vacation a few times. I feel this way when I'm at my mom's house. Well, it's not my house, so that really helps. But I really do feel like sometimes when I'm at mom's house, it feels like the beach or like you're on vacation. And I know my parents do the same thing. Like
Aw.
they go on vacation. They're like, something they're like, it's just as good at home. Sometimes like you really
Yeah.
cultivate like a place you want to be. It feels like you're on vacation.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Like I like to sit on my porch and think I am where I want to be. Like, you
Yes.
could go rent some wonderful Airbnb somewhere or stay on some resort on the ocean or whatever, which would be nice. But in terms of just sitting there and having a feeling of having nature around you and being happy and fulfilled, then I want to achieve that at home and not feel like I'm surrounded by a bunch of chores that need to be done. So this is a mindset. This is a mindset. Yeah. My gardens are not tidy.
I mean, there's a price to perfection.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I've sort of adopted this style of let things be what they're going to be and do what I can, do what I really want to do.
Yes.
That's key too. What
Yes.
do I want to do?
Yeah. I mean, that is why I have very wonderful cleaning people that
Mhm.
are coming
Mhm.
today.
Mhm.
Oh,
Because
100%.
I don't want to spend all this time outside cleaning the barns, cleaning the stables, working in the garden, weeding, and then come in and clean my house. And so I am very self-sufficient oriented, clearly, and I want to do everything on my own. That is one thing where I had to, make a compromise again for myself and say, okay, if I don't have to worry about that and I remove that from my plate, is that helping me? Yes. Is it worth the money to me? Yes. I can come in and feel like I was working hard labor all day and come into a clean house. All right, then that's worth it.
Yes.
Right?
Thumbs up. 100% yes. These decisions, these conscious decisions about where we spend our time, money, and resources, this is part of slow living. This is slow living. Know what you're doing. So, what does the good dirt mean to you? And I think you answered it last time.
I did, but I don't remember what I
But
said.
Yeah, let's
now.
go say it again.
Okay, so just listen. What does the good dirt mean to you, Angela? And you can say whatever you want about that.
Good dirt mean? Okay, well, I think last time I may have had more of a conceptual answer. So this time I think I'm going to try to go more literal. So I think quite literally, the good dirt means something that is enriched to the point that we have given more back than what we've taken. And so in this literal sense, the good dirt would be we've given more organic matter, growth, plants, perennials, mycorrhiza, beneficial microbes, compost, animal nutrient soil cycle. We've given all that, but we might have taken a harvest, but we've given much more in return.
So good.
Thanks.
So good. I love that. I'm going to think about that when I'm out there today. Like, I do try to be conscious of soil all the time, but I just like that slant on it. What am I going to give to the soil? What am I going to give to the dirt?
Yes.
I'm going to give it my food waste for
Mhm.
sure.
Perfect.
Or my leftover food. I'm going to compost.
Perfect.
Pony manure.
Yes.
Have lots of that. I'm going to give it green manure by letting things grow over the bare ground so it's not bare.
Yes.
And yeah, there's all kinds of things.
We hear it a lot as gardeners and growers, but we hear, you need to get back to the soil. And for me personally, one of the big shifts that I had was it could be very boring and it could be very scientific, and we'd much rather grow a watermelon and flowers than think about the dirt. But for me, what worked was thinking, okay, I'm going to be a soil farmer. What does that mean? How am I going to make good soil? And as a byproduct of that, I'll plant a seed, but I'm going to get a really good plant. And so that for me, placing the sense of priority on the soil, is huge. It changed everything.
Yes. And the more people we talk to, the more we do this, the more conversations and the more we learn, the more it all seems to be pointing towards the soil health as the promise for our future health and thriving. It's so much of it boils down to that because that's our food. That's our sustenance. That's,
It's huge.
the earth, just kind of everything. So yes, the good dirt. That's why we have the good dirt
The good dirt.
conversations every week. So thank you, Angela. This was so fun to circle back and talk to you again after 2.5 years.
So, yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's so fun to check in. Can you mention your books one more time and then tell us the name of your podcast and where folks can find you?
Sure, thank you. So my book is The Sustainable Homestead. The family-oriented series is called the Little Homesteader series. There are 4, one for each season. These are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, wherever you source your books from. My Instagram handle, YouTube handle, website, it's all Axe AXE and A&D Root Homestead. All across the board, same username. And then my podcast is a shared podcast that I have with a co-host, and that's called Homesteaducation. And that's where we just do more of not just a how-to, and not just practical application of homesteading skills, but we also talk about like a lot of what goes on the psyche of the homesteader, how we feel when we're doing certain things. And so we kind of cover the entire gamut of a homesteader.
Very cool.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you so much. The pleasure has been mine.
It's been so fun. Thank you for tuning in, calling in, and spreading the good dirt. We love hearing from you. You can reach our listener voicemail at 443-459-1950. That's 443-459-1950. You can find this number in our show notes and in our Instagram profile.
This show is produced by Lady Farmer, a slow living lifestyle community, and the original music is composed and performed by John Kingsley.
For more from Lady Farmer, follow us on Instagram at WeAreLadyFarmer. That's WeAreLadyFarmer. Or join us online at www.ladyfarmer.com. We'll see you next time on The Good Dirt.
Goodbye.